record so, so that I don't forget, because that otherwise I might, because my brain is like tapioca today. Because yesterday I spent, oh my God, I spent, because this book that I'm working on, I don't know how many have heard that I'm working on a book. It's called Doll Couture. It's for 11 and a half inch fashion dolls. And it's the story of Lola. And let me go get Lola. I want to introduce you to Lola. Um, Her name is Lola. She was a showgirl. This is permanently attached. So, um,
Is that the one where we were afraid for your mental health during the lockdown?
no, no,
You.
that's Crazy Bella. She,
Oh, okay.
she will be in the story too. Uh, Lola, I don't now if you're not following Lola the Showgirl 24, because you might see on my Instagram references to that. It couldn't hurt to start because see, the Crazy Bella blackmail story is going to sort of merge with the Lola story. The closer the we get to the launch date of the book, which is I'm told sometime late November. And so the story briefly, and I think they're going to cut some photos out, but I'm going to use all the photos on Lola the Showgirl 24, is that
Some of her gay friends right here.
yes,
Love them. Oh my gosh.
you
It
know
is
at some point I need to do like one for the boy dolls, because the so this actually this little outfit is going to be on the cover or on the back cover of Threads magazine for the holiday issue. So and there will be a little article on how, here's the pattern, here's how you make the little palazzo pants. So that is that's what I've been working on. Lola, we kind of know her story. She lost her way, she descended into drink. But then I have a little photo of her in a diner reading the New York Post, where Bella's tormentors were sent to jail. And she decides that if Bella could triumph, so could she, because they were both showgirls at one time. And so she went to rehab. So then she got out of rehab. She connected with the Orloff Valinsky triplets, a rollerblading girl group from Eastern Europe, and their mail order husbands. And they went to the Kenneth D. King studio with Crazy Bella and we decided to make her a new wardrobe to help her get her life together. That's the short elevator version of it. And so towards the end of the story, Rico, who was a problem, is taken away and thrown in jail. And Lola gets a good job, and she has this new wardrobe, and she has a new circle of friends, and it has a happy ending. That's the short version. So each plot point, the outfits that Lola is wearing are what we make. And so there are instructions on how to sew it together and so forth. So, it starts with panties, because when you get a new wardrobe, you want some new panties. And then there's the pajamas. Then let's see, there's the little day dress, there's the little tops and little flare skirts, there's a dolman coat, trousers, and a little blouse. Then there is a Chanel suit. And finally, there is a strapless cocktail dress and cocktail coat. So that's what I've been working on. And oh God, the editing has been just, oh my God, it's been a nightmare, because it's just, this is the process, and when numbering goes wrong, it goes horribly wrong. And so I finally just set everything off today and said, okay, what I need to do is I need to sit at a computer with you all to make sure that you do this right and answer questions in real time. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but so that's what I've been working on. And so if I look a little bleary, it's because I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning in a panic. And because I care about it. I want it to be right. So yeah, so it was one of those, like, just get up, just go to the gym, just get back here, just turn off the music, turn off the radio, and just sit down and grind through it. So that's what I was doing all today. So
Can you get back on the bus?
excuse
Yeah.
me?
You
What
have
was
money?
what was that?
Yeah.
Oh, I think someone's talking to someone else. So, okay. So it is 7 o'clock. And so, hello, this is the tailor, like the first section of tailoring. So what I was saying to the people, for the people who are just joining us, what I was saying to the people who were here before is that this is going to be, we're doing this in 3 sections. It's going to be 6 weeks. Then we're going to have probably 4 or 5 weeks. It may run into the holidays. And actually, I'll check in with all of you to see when we should start it, because you're going to be the first whole class that goes through. And so you're going to have some time between this class and the next class to get all your homework done, so that you can, when we start the next class, you've gotten everything to this point, and then we move forward. And then that's going to be another 6 weeks. Then we're going to have another break, and then another 6 weeks. That's how I've set this all up, so that it's going to be, it's kind of what I call a long form class, but we're doing what I call an old school tailor jacket. This is, the pad stitching, the hand taped roll lines, the whole thing, I mean, all of that sort of thing. Surgeon's cuffs, side vents, vent stay, peak lapel. So I guess before I start kind of going on, turning on, because see, for those who haven't taken classes with me, a lot of you look very familiar. What I do is I have prepared video and then question and answer. So when I turn on the video, if you have a question, stop me right then. Because see, the beauty of this is I can stop the video, we can roll it back if we need to, and I can further explain with the cursor, point things out, that sort of thing. So as we're going along, don't be shy about asking me to stop and asking a question, because it's much more useful to ask a question right when it occurs, rather than trying to wait to the end, because when the question occurs, it's better to have that answer. So what I'm doing now, I'm recording the Zoom session. So each week when we finish, I'll download this, I'll download it to YouTube, and then I'll probably tomorrow morning email you the link to this Zoom meeting on YouTube and the link to the video that's contained within. I'm also going to email you a link to hand stitches, because I think you all know your hand stitches. So I'm not going to burn through a lot of time with them in the video here, but I'm going to give it to you so that you have it as reference, and you can, because there are some people who know the stitches, they may not know the name of the stitch. So I just think it's instructive to have a video of the hand stitches that we're going to be using in this particular class. Okay, so do I have any questions, any comments, any requests, hopes, fears, dreams, desires? Don't all talk at once. Okay, then. Well, I guess what we're going to do now, let's just start the video. So the show tonight is we're going to be doing the pattern making. Because see, and so one thing before I start the video on this, you all each have an office hour. I want to make sure that the patterns fit. This office hour can be, now, it can be a little later, between now and the next class. So if you can't get to it right away, that's great. But I just feel it's fair to make sure that your garments fit before you actually go to all of the trouble of doing all the extra patterns and pieces. Because what I like to do, and how I was trained in pattern making, is you draft the main body piece, then there are all the parts and pieces, the lapels, the collars, the facings, the linings, the body canvases, the backstays. There are a number of parts and pieces that you have to generate before we actually start cutting and construction. So tonight's lesson is really how we generate the different pieces. So we're going to be starting with a well-fitting jacket, and then we're going to be drafting the peak lapel, and we're going to go from there. So that is the lesson for this evening. Yes, go ahead, Faye.
Excuse me, Kenneth. Okay, I took the Jaseka jacket before with the shawl collar.
Yeah.
All my pattern pieces have all the corrections that we did during the 1 hour class.
Yeah.
For this class, should I redraft, just copy, not redraft, but copy my pattern pieces so I will have a fresh pattern piece?
Here. Yeah. Yeah, less confusing, because see, we're going to be drafting a peak lapel onto this because that was a shawl lapel.
Right.
And what you're going to see, for those who didn't take that class, and this is something in pattern making. When I teach pattern making to my students, I teach peak lapel, shawl lapel, and peak lapel, notch lapel draft, that pretty much the same way. They're both kind of subsets of the same draft, and you're going to see a similarity. And what I tell my students is, if you know how to draft a shawl lapel, you can work to get a peak lapel or a notch lapel. So you're going to see that in this draft. So what you want to do is you want your upper sleeve, under sleeve. You want your 3 main body pieces: the front, the side, the back. And so the rest of the piece, you make fresh copies of that. The rest, everything else, you can actually put away, because that's, regard that as a different jacket.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So other questions now, because see, this little thing on the side here, I'm going to collapse that so you can get a full view of the of the video. Here, one moment here. Let me just pull this in just a bit here, because I want you to see the whole thing. And so I'm going to collapse down this here. And so, like I said, if you have questions, just shout them out. Don't hold your hand up, because I won't be able to see it. So, and don't be shy about questions. That's what this is for. Okay.
I have a question, but it's about materials. Is now
Okay.
the time to ask, or should I wait?
No, this is actually a good time. Let's do that before we go into the pattern making.
Okay. The difference between using the heavy or the lighter weight canvas.
It gives you a lighter weight canvas, gives you a more flexible jacket. It's if you're, there are some people who really don't like a jacket because they think all jackets are stiff. That's not necessarily the case. Some jackets are stiffer because the canvas is heavier. If you like a garment that is a little more supple, go with a thinner canvas. What I've seen is that for ladies' garments, they tend to wear a thinner canvas because it's much more comfortable.
Okay. And then with the lining, I usually use charmeuse. Should I not use that? What I understand is Duchess satin is a lot heavier.
I would recommend a Duchess satin, at least for this.
Do you have a place maybe online where I can order a basic color?
I would check with Gorgeous Fabrics in Boston.
Okay.
Or Emma One Sock.
Okay.
Those are 2 good places that you could work. And actually, Gorgeous Fabrics, she kind of knows my tailoring, so she could get you what you need. There's also Mulberry Silks in Carborough, North Carolina. And I don't know if they have an online thing, but you can order from them and have it sent. So those would be 3 good places to choose from.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So other questions? Okay, then let us.
I'm sorry, I've got a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Why are you recommending the Duchess satin over a charmeuse?
I think it's easier to work with, for one thing. For this kind of jacket, especially with the details we're working on, it really is easier to work with.
Okay.
So it gives you, it's a little stiffer. It gives the jacket a little more body.
Kenneth?
Yes, go ahead.
As you're talking, I'm looking at my pattern pieces. For now, I'm using a Simplicity men's jacket. It's got notch lapels, and it has a single vent. And you keep saying side piece. I'm looking at my inventory, and all I have is a front piece and the back.
Okay.
And of course, the upper and under sleeves, and then the facings.
Yeah. Well, see, a 3-panel jacket would work better. It's, you can make this work with that, because see, because what that sounds like is you have just a side seam where a side seam would normally occur.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, full disclosure, I went to the fabric store to Joann's to see if I can find. It was a Vogue men's. Actually, it's a peak lapel. I think it actually, and it does have double vent, so it might have a side panel. But
Wow.
they were out of my size, so I'm not going to have have that pattern until I guess the next few days, and if I order it, would it be better to try to get that?
I would get that. I think you'd be,
Okay.
actually, I've seen you and you're tall. I think you'd look better with a 3-panel jacket with side vents.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you. Now that I'm skinny again.
Yeah, well, hey, good for you. Okay, so other questions. So we're good? Okay, so let us, I'll collapse this down and don't be shy about asking questions because that's what this is for. So let's go.
I realize this looks like a dizzying array of pieces, dozens and dozens of pieces. These are all the pieces that we're going to be drafting in this next video. But I thought I would pull them all out here just to show you that when you get done, a step at a time, you're going to have all of these pieces and you'll feel very proud of yourself. We have a lot of work to do, so let's get busy.
And Kenneth,
Yes, go ahead.
the video is showing up on my computer on the itty bitty little screen. Is that what it's doing with everybody else?
Because it should be showing up as a full screen on me.
I see a full
Oh.
screen.
Okay, I got it fixed. Sorry
Okay.
for the interruption.
Not to worry, that's good. Okay, so
We'll be using the Jessica jacket by Closet Core Patterns because I have found that it's quite a good pattern to use for this particular purpose. We will remove the seam allowances. We'll be drafting these patterns with the stitching lines, but I will have the hem allowances of 1.5 inches added. So understand that going forward. And again, we have a lot of work to do, so let's get busy. Here we have the jacket back panel, the jacket side panel. Now, one thing I like to do coming down at the hem, I like to raise up the hem by 1/2 inch because I want an 1.5 inch hem allowance. In construction, this will be more clear. The other thing I'm doing here, as you can see, is right up here, this blue line, which ends about 3 inches down from the intersection of the armhole and the side seam. This portion eventually will turn into the back stay. Now, coming down to this area here, these are the extensions for the side vent. They end about 3 inches below the waist. They are 2 inches wide. You can cut the side vent extensions 2 inches wide or 3 inches wide. I'm actually going to be going with 3 inches in the construction. Now that I have these drawn out, I'm going to trace off this piece here. That will turn into the back stay. So if we're looking at it,
Kenneth, I have a
this
quick
line
question.
here
yes,
is
go
the
ahead.
center back.
Yes, go ahead.
So I have right here my Jessica pattern that I just cut out. So should I be going in and removing 5/8 of an inch and creating a new pattern like you have here?
Absolutely, much less confusing.
Gotcha.
See, how
Okay.
how I learned it and how I teach it because I find it less confusing. Now on the Jessica, you might want to look at what they say the seam allowance of the shoulder and the neck are because I think
Okay.
they're a little bit different. But what I have found is having all the stitching lines on your patterns and then later on, if you need to, adding your seam allowances is a lot more accurate way of working.
Gotcha. Okay. So I've cut them out. I will now cut them down by 5/8 of an inch, trace them onto new paper.
Okay. So now what I would say is not cut them down, but what you might
Yeah.
want to do is just use, get a pencil and measure in the 5/8 of an inch.
Gotcha.
Or whatever, because it's a lot easier to trace out on a pencil line rather than a cut edge.
Right. And then I can use like the wax paper to transfer that onto my pattern,
That's correct. Yes.
onto my fabric.
Onto
Gotcha.
paper.
Okay.
Onto your
Thank you.
paper. Onto your paper. Yeah, because see,
My paper, yes.
because see, on this, I'm not really going to be marking stitching lines a lot on any of this. So I'm going to be adding seam allowances to all of this.
Okay.
Okay. But
Thank you.
for the pattern making, it's much easier and less confusing to start with all the stitching lines. And then once you got all the pieces generated, then add your seam allowances.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So other questions before we continue? Okay. Well, then moving right along.
Fold, we're going to get seam allowances all along here and here. This will not get a seam allowance, but you'll see that later. So we've traced off the back stay. We also then want to trace off the back lining. And the back lining, we trace off all the way over to the vent extension, all the way up, all the way down. And that is going to yield this piece here. Now, the one alteration I like to do on this piece is we're wanting to come up 3/4 of an inch on the hem of the lining. We want it to end up slightly shorter than the body, so up 3/4 of an inch. So that is the lining back. And one other thing I like to do for the lining back is to draft an extension at the center back. What that's going to look like here is we're going to extend 1 inch, and the waist is roughly here. So this will blend to the waist. So what that creates is a back pleat. So we now have the back lining. Write this off. So we have the lining back. We have the back stay. And we can set this piece aside. Now we're going to go back to the body side panel. So now the body side panel, we will trace off the entire piece with all the matching notches and such. That will yield this piece here. So on this one, as well as the back lining, we want to raise up the hem allowance 3/4 of an inch. So now that I have done the modifications, I'm going to go off camera. I will add the seam allowances and bring you back the results. Here we have the completed body side panel. Note that I've added 5/8 of an inch all around these sides here, but there's no need to add anything at the hem allowance or on the vent extension. Same goes for the lining side back. It's 5/8 of an inch. all around these edges here. And one other thing, it's just good to mark these 2 points because these will become important when you're constructing. I will go off camera and add the seam allowances to the back pieces. Here are the back pieces, and this is the body back panel. And you add 5/8 inch seam allowances around all of this area to the top of the vent, and you make a matching notch on the top of the vent. From here, this comes to here. This is the back stay. And so the back stay, you add 5/8 of an inch here, 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 and to the side seam. But this edge here, you pink that. So this will be a cut edge that hangs loose in the garment. So you don't need a seam allowance on that. From here, bring in body back lining. And there are a few little differences. The first one is
Kenneth,
Yes, hang
what
on.
I've done here.
Yes, go ahead.
good evening. This is Paul.
Hi there.
Hi. On the back stay, you said that from the, I guess, like the underarm of where the back stay, the back part would attach to the side panel, 3 inches down.
Yes.
How far is the center back down from the center back of the neck? How far?
Well, it's, oh, you mean from here down, this is at least 10 inches, 10 or 11 inches. This sort of thing I draw by eye, but if you say at least 10 inches down from the center back of the neck, you're good.
So are you just wanting to
What will the
cover-
backstay be cut out of?
Okay, the backstay will be cut from muslin. It will live between the lining and the main body fabric. What I
Gotcha.
like about a backstay, and you'll see this later on, but it's just good to talk about it now, is that I like to have it because what it does is, one thing it does is it smooths out the cut edge of the shoulder pads so they don't necessarily read through to the front. You can also catch stitch the edges of the shoulder pad to the back stay so they don't curl over time. And it gives the back shoulder just a little bit of reinforcement. That's what the purpose of it is.
And what is that fabric is that part of the interfacings?
Well, this is just muslin, just garden variety muslin is good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just any old thing. And it's cut on the center back. So yeah, it goes between the body fabric and the lining fabric.
So are you trying to at least cover the back, the scapulas, the back on your back? Geez, the medical term is scapulas, but
Oh, you mean the shoulder blades? Yeah, you want this to go a little below the shoulder blades.
Okay, all right. And the purpose of the back stay is to do what?
It just reinforces the back of the garment. It also gives you something to tack the shoulder pads to. It also smooths out the tendency for some shoulder pads to read through the outer fabric.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so other questions? Yeah.
Yes, I have one.
Yeah.
All right, so now my back seam is usually not straight, it's curved. So I usually in the stay, I will have a seam there, and that's okay, right? Because I need.
Well, if you have a seam over it, absolutely. It's all good. It doesn't show.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And you know, if you really wanted to, what you could do is you could treat this like a piece of inner lining. And when you sew the seam of the body, you can catch that in that seam.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So other questions?
Yes, I have one, Kenneth.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, you were talking about shoulder pads.
Yes.
Do the shoulder pads need to be covered in like the lining fabric?
Oh, man. No, the shoulder pads will live between the lining and the garment. So
Okay.
they are completely concealed inside the lining.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So other questions? Okay, so now we're talking about this one here, and aside from the pleat, there's and I'm going to run this, but this is a 5/8 in seam allowance to here and to here, but the shoulder seam is the exception. It gets a 1-inch seam allowance because just the way this constructs, you need a little extra on that shoulder seam. So
1/8 of an inch around here and then up to here. And this is just important to know. On the shoulder, there you can see it. This shoulder seam allowance is 1 inch. You'll give a 1 inch on the front as well, but this helps you to finesse the shoulder pad later on. Then we're going to give 5/8 of an inch here and all the way down to the vent. So here, lay all these three out. And we have the back pieces and the side pieces.
now I'm going to stop here for just a moment. You notice how methodical I'm being about this, where you have one piece and you generate all of the different sections from that one piece, and then you move on to the next piece. What I like about doing that is then you tend not to skip any pieces. So this is just something like when you're drafting patterns, to kind of be a little organized about it. This is one way that's going to keep you from forgetting to draft a particular piece. So moving right along. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question about the vent. On the Jessica, the vent is like in the center back.
Right.
So
We're making side vents.
we're putting it to the side, and so the side panel, we're adding it there. Okay, I just
Okay.
want to double check.
Yeah, it's different than the center vent because, see, for a lot of years, I didn't wear side vents because I had it in my mind that my butt was too big and they look like a trapdoor flapping up and down. And I had to have several people kind of, sat me down and said, well, it may have been too big at one point, but there's not much of it there now. So you can have side vents. So that's why I'm wearing side vents these days. Okay. Okay, moving right along.
Next, the sleeves. We begin with the undersleeve. Now, to get you oriented here, this line here is the fold of the hem for the sleeve length. So I like to give 1.5 inches hem allowance, and I'm making my vent 4 inches high. So this will be the vent, and then this is a 2-inch extension. So everything outlined in orange is what we add to the undersleeve. Next, I'll show you the upper sleeve. On the upper sleeve, this line here represents the finished edge of the cuff. This height here is 4 inches, as we did for the undersleeve, because it has to match. And so this here, that is again 2 inches, and the hem allowance is 1.5 inches. So this is the setup. Now what we will do is fold the paper along this line here. And trace out along here. To here. When we unfold that, I'm going to go off camera and fill this in so you can see what that looks like. So here, these lines here were transferred down to here. So here you have the combined hem allowance and the facing for the cuff on the upper half. Now that we have all of this done, we're going to make the sleeve linings.
Kenneth, can I ask a question about this?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I'm very surprised that you're doing that because you don't want a seam at the hem.
Well, yeah, we want to turn here. Actually, there's going to be a seam here.
Right.
Facing, but I don't like a seam along the edge of a tailored jacket. I think having a fold is much more attractive.
Okay, but like I would have assumed, like on a bespoke jacket, they would not, that wastes a lot of material having that piece hang off there.
What you mean? Which piece? This
The piece underneath the dash line.
Oh, you mean this here?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, you see, this is just the pattern. See,
Yeah,
we're going to be cut when we add the seam allowances. We're going to cut it like so. So, you're not, and really, honestly, I mean, you would just be wasting that little sliver. And also, when you're dealing with a bespoke jacket, you have plenty of money. So wasting a little tiny sliver of fabric is not really that much of an issue.
All right, because I guess I've seen documentaries of them, and they're just really stingy with fabric. They butt everything up against each other.
Yeah, and I encourage that. And
Right.
so the pencil line is canceled. The pencil line is the original pattern, as it comes from the envelope.
Right.
This line here, which you're going to see, I'm going to color that in.
I'm just worried about the that square above your black sleeve.
Sure.
No, below, or whatever. Because you get that you're getting an L at the bottom,
Right,
correct?
exactly. Right. But you see what's going to happen. This is all cut as one.
Yeah.
And so this here
Yes.
is a facing.
Right.
So you're going to have a seam here. This is the overlap. This is where the buttons go, or the buttonholes go.
Right.
You need a facing for that buttonhole.
Right. I understand.
And so that's what that is. So it's not going to go to waste. It's just, this is a different way of constructing a cuff. This is called a surgeon's cuff. So you could actually have working buttonholes, and you could turn this up if you wish.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's what this is for. Okay.
And can I have a question about the sleeve length?
Yeah. So
since I've got 37-inch sleeve length, so when I get my pattern piece, I'm going to have to lengthen it. So should I just take the commercial pattern piece, and just place it on my shoulder and naturally hang my arm to try to get an approximate length from that?
Yes.
Or should I use measurements?
Well, you know what I do? I like to take a measurement. Well, actually, what you might do, you have suit jackets, right?
Uh-huh.
Measure one of those.
Oh.
See, from the top of the cap to the fold where it sits properly on your arm, because I'm sure you have your sleeves, your suit tailored. So you just use an existing garment that you like the fit of, and use that as your reference.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay. So other questions?
This is Paula.
Yeah.
Now, if you're wanting to do bound buttonholes,
okay. Okay, the bound buttonholes is, you would, of course, mark your buttonhole where you want the buttonholes here. If I were doing a bound buttonhole, I would make this facing more like 3 inches, because it's going to give you a little more room.
Okay.
But you would make the bound buttonholes on the outside before you sew this facing together. And so that's, the bound buttonholes occur fairly early in the process.
Right. Okay.
Is
now,
that?
I've been told that a nice men's jacket has at least 4 buttonholes.
See, that's, that is, well, actually, what I've seen, the minimum is 3. I've seen up to 5 or 6. And that really, honestly, I think that's a personal taste.
Okay. So what is traditional? 3 or 4?
What was that again? I missed that.
For ladies, is it 3 or 4?
I would do 3.
Okay.
It's more delicate.
All right. Okay.
Okay. So other questions? Okay, then we'll continue.
I'm going to go off camera and fill this in so you can see what that looks like. So here, these lines here, were transferred down to here. So here you have the combined hem allowance and the facing for the cuff on the upper half. Now that we have all of this done, we're going to make the sleeve linings. What I've done here is to make an exact copy of what we just drafted. And really the only variation is down here at the cuff. So really what you're going to do is you're going to subtract 3/4 of an inch from the hem allowances, like so. That goes away. And so from here, I will add all of the seam allowances to everything, and I will bring you back the results. So you have the body upper and under sleeve, and as you can see, there are 5/8 inch seam allowances all around to here. No need for seam allowance here or here or here. And on the under sleeve, seam allowances go down to the cut edge. And this is 2 inches, but the seam allowance starts there. So these are
Excuse me, Kenneth.
Yes.
the body piece.
On these two pieces at the bottom,
Yeah.
okay, right there, the upper sleeve, you have 4 inches from where it folds at where it would be at your wrist.
Yeah.
On the under sleeve, you're
4
Oh.
inches.
okay. So that's
Yeah, and
okay.
that's
Never
for
mind. That's
full.
fine. I just answered my own question. Sorry.
Okay, we good?
Oh, one more question. Is there a seam allowance on that 2-inch extension?
No, I just turn this up and make it like 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch in
Okay.
construction.
Okay, so just cut it at the 2 inches.
Cut it at the 2 inches, you should be fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
To here, no need for seam allowance here or here or here. And on the under sleeve, seam allowances go down to the cut edge. And this is 2 inches, but the seam allowance starts there. So these are the body pieces. And then moving right along, here we have the lining pieces. So again, you can see seam allowances 5/8 of an inch all around. We don't have an extension here on the upper sleeve, but we retain the extension here on the undersleeve, but notice the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance stops there. So now we have all of these.
Now I'm going to stop because the question was about the seam allowance on the outer layer. The facing, this is going to face the underlap. So that's why we don't add a separate seam allowance. We're going to sew that by hand later. So did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And so I'm just, while I have this stopped, you probably have noticed this, but I'm just going to point it out. Notice there's a thing about being very disciplined in your pattern making. Mark things like you're going to be stricken with amnesia at any moment. Any information you want on those pattern pieces, make sure you put it on there, because what's going to happen if you don't is that later on, when you're going to be actually starting to cut and so forth, it might back you into a corner. So I've just found over time, and this is something I learned from my teacher Simone, is that you mark your patterns like you're going to be stricken with amnesia at any moment, so that when you pick these things up, you know exactly what you're looking at. So it's just a good habit to get into.
We turn our attention now to the front of the jacket. This is the peak lapel shape that we're.
Now I'm doing this out in the hallway, so it sounds like if it sounds like I'm in a tunnel, I'm in the hallway. So sorry about that.
going to be creating on this particular jacket. So I will be making a tracing of this for pattern making. Before we draft our shawl lapel, because we are changing this shape from a notch lapel to a peaked lapel, what I like to do for pattern making purposes is pivot this dart closed before I draft the shawl lapel. We will go back and reverse this and open this later. So the easiest way really is to draw a line from here down to the top here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to cut here. We're going to cut down to here and through here. So let me make the cuts. There's the cut there because we want to free up
Kenneth,
Yes.
this dart.
I did the shawl lapel.
Yeah.
Where do I get, if I'm using my pattern pieces that I made my jacket with,
Mhm.
how do I get this back into my pattern piece?
You know, actually, if you don't have it, no harm, no foul.
Okay.
You know, it is in the original, and I showed how to get rid of it in the shawl lapel, but I'm leaving it here. And what I had to do in my jacket is I had to go back in and add one in so that my construction would be consistent with this pattern. So, but if you don't have this dart on your lapel, you don't have to do this.
Okay, so then I don't have to worry about drawing that line down to the
Right.
dart.
Right. Because see, what we want to do is we want to pivot out this dart and for temporarily, and we're going to put it down in here temporarily until we draft the peak lapel. And then once we get all the pieces, then we're going to work backwards and close this back up and open this dart back out. That's the point here. So if you don't have the dart, you know, all good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So we want to close it. Then we're going to make a cut from the end of the waist dart up to there, leaving the paper connected right here. And then down through. And then out like so. So we've cut from here to here, from there to there, there to here, and then here to here. So what's going to happen here? Just going to fold that closed, tape it closed for drafting purposes. And I will tape a little paper in here. So that we can see what we're doing for the time being. Now, we have this closed. We can now begin drafting the peak lapel.
What are you going to do about all that fullness that you just created by spreading?
Okay, so what's going to happen after we get the peak lapel drafted? We're going to go back, we're going to open this dart, we're going to fold all this back into its original position, which will put all of this back into the dart here.
Okay.
But for drafting, we need to get this dart down here to get, you know, all of this drafted around here. But then we're going to back it off so that we will have this dart here under the lapel, and this will close, and this all down here will close. Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, as we go along, it will make more sense. Right now, it feels like what the hell, but yeah, it'll make a little more sense as we go along.
First, we want to establish a V neckline. Now, I have marked right here. That's where the button is on your pattern. So we're going to draw a line from there straight up. Like so. So this orange line is the V neckline. I'm going to angle up a little bit. So from here, this is where, let me see, let's get this down here a little bit so you can see a little better. And let me zoom in. Okay, the next step is we want to know the back neck measure, which in this case is 3 5/8. So you've measured that, we can set that aside. And now what we're going to do here is, I'm just going to call this point A. So 3 5/8 minus 2/8. So from A to B is the back neck measure minus 1/4 inch. This is formula. There, we measure backwards from B to C, and that is perpendicular to this line 3/8. And from C, you're going to draw a curved line back to A. So the blue line here, that represents your neck seam. Now from here, we're going to draw a line perpendicular to the blue line.
Kenneth,
Yes.
could you go back and, so you curve the line to C, you curve the line from A to C now.
That's correct. Yes. And so this
Okay.
should measure that back neck measure minus 1/4 inch. And so when you're drafting this line here, this is going to be the center back neck, the center back on the collar. And so this is a 90-degree angle here. Some people make their 90-degree angle off of the orange line. Don't do that. It's a 90-degree angle from this point C. Did that answer the question?
It did, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So other questions so far?
Yes, Kenneth.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Since I've already done this on the shawl collar jacket, I don't need to redo this, right?
Well, you're in pretty good shape. Kind of watch, because see, you have a shawl lapel already, and this is something. When I was teaching pattern making at FIT, they have the official FIT way of drafting a notch lapel, which is kind of a nosebleed. So I had to show this that, and I said, okay, if you want a shortcut that you can get a shawl lapel or a notch lapel, if you remember the shawl lapel, it's very quick and easy to turn it into a notch. So you're about halfway there. You have all of this geometry already. So you're going to be in good shape. Some of this is looking familiar to you, I imagine.
Yes, it is. Very, very familiar. Yes.
Yeah. So really where we go, and, for those who, it will be revealed, but it's just the shape of the outer edge and how we then split off the upper collar. That's different. Otherwise, it's a shawl lapel draft.
Okay. Thank you.
So for everyone else, sorry about that. This, she took the last class, and so
Yeah, sorry to keep bringing up the shawl lapel collar, but this is exactly what we did there.
yeah, it is, and so because when I was teaching one time, it was an evening class, I was teaching, and I had a student in my class who was interning in the workrooms at Calvin Klein. So they would ask him week to week what he learned, and he showed them this, because he said to me, well, why would you want to know how to turn a shawl lapel into a notch lapel? I said, well, if you have a shawl lapel jacket body and you need a notch lapel jacket, it's about 5 minutes, but you can charge for a whole new draft. And he told the guys at Calvin Klein, and they said, that's freaking brilliant. So apparently they had not learned that. So yeah. So anyway, questions before we continue? Okay, then. Well, we will continue.
This will represent the center back. Now, I'm going to break away for a moment to demonstrate. It's a little video on what the stand, the fall, the cover, and the turn of cloth are. How we determine the height of the collar. I'm showing it at the center back. And what we have first is the stand, which is from the neck seam on up to the fold. And then from here, from the fold to the edge is called the fall. Now also you add what I call the cover, which is a 1/2 inch, and that keeps the edge of the collar covering the neck seam, which is considered proper. From here, we add 1/4 inch for turn of cloth. So you have the stand plus the fall plus the cover plus the turn of cloth. And that then determines exactly how high your collar is at the center back. And this is how you determine it. So now that you have seen that, this is the center back seam that you saw in the video. So the stand, we're using 1 1/4 inches, and the fall will equal the stand. So 1 1/4 inches for the stand, 1 1/4 inches for the fall, 1/2 inch for the cover, and 1/4 inch for the turn of cloth. So the total from the neck seam to the outer edge in this case is 3 1/2 inches. So now what I will do is measure parallel to this line, 3 1/2 inches, all the way around to roughly, if you extend the shoulder seam out. So that's 3 1/2 inches. So I'm going to draw a curved line like so.
Yes.
Is it 3 1/2 standard? Would you ever vary from the 3 1/2
You could.
inches?
Generally, the collar stand on most jackets is 1 1/4 to 1.5 inches. The highest I've gone is 2. Anything taller than that, that's going to sit close to the neck, you run the risk of actually running into your ears. So,
Okay.
I mean, you know, because my students at FIT, when they draft these collars that are like 6, 7 inches. And I would say to them, you know, they put it on the dress form. I said, well, this is great if you don't have a head. But most people who are wearing these garments have a head. And so 1 1/4 1.5 inches is a good general rule. If you've got a long, graceful neck, you can go a little taller than that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
That represents the finished edge of the back of the collar. From here, we need to get the roll line. Now, the orange line we drew was called the V-neck line. The roll line is where the collar will actually fold. So to find that, you want to mark out 1/2 inch out from A. We'll call that D. And then you find a midpoint between D and the edge of the collar. Easiest way to do that really is to fold the paper. So there is the vertical, and if you extended the shoulder seam this way, that intersection right there, it's midway between here and
Kenneth,
here.
could you show where you
That-
folded again for me?
Yeah, well, I folded this right onto this point here. So
Okay.
we want a midpoint between, because see what this is going to represent is the collar sitting a little bit outside the edge of the neck seam. And that's-
Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
so-
get it. It was
Okay.
easier than measuring math. It's not math.
Yeah. So, you know, sometimes I'll do it in math, but you know, a lot of times I just fold it because it's quicker.
The upper end of the roll line. Let me just pull out a little bit. So now that we have the upper end of the roll line, we're going to bring it down. Here we are. We're going to put the ruler down here. And we want the roll line to finish about 4 inches up from here. So let's just say right about there. That there. is the roll line. Now for pattern making with a turn of cloth, I'm going to draw a pencil line because this is just for drafting. This will serve us later when we create the shape of the collar. This is the peak lapel shape that we're going to be creating on this particular jacket. So I will be making a tracing of this for pattern making. So here we have the setup. We're all set up for this. And this is where we bring in the tracing, the peak lapel. And this you can make this fit really anywhere you want. But what you want to do is the collar edge, you want to put on point D. You can see here, there's the shoulder. And now what I'm going to do is trace out this. And this here. So I'll go off camera and mark that out onto the draft so you can see in a moment.
Kenneth, this is Nina. Can you do that again where you placed the peak lapel? You said on point B. Can you just show that where you're
Right
on D, on D.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so this can be higher up, it can be lower down. That is actually to taste. And actually, I have to look in my file. I believe I have scanned this document. If not, I will and email it to you all so you have it.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you. I thought I was going crazy. I didn't know where that came from.
Yeah, this is because I took a tracing from that jacket that I was showing in the videos, because that is actually the first jacket. And I'm going to brag for a moment, because when I took the pattern from the Saint Laurent jacket and I drafted the peak lapel on it, I drafted all the different pieces and I didn't even make a muslin. And so that jacket was my muslin and it turned out pretty good.
I'd say.
Yeah. Okay. And so yeah, so what we want to do, we want to get these design lines where you want them to occur in the final garment. And so that, to a certain degree, is personal taste. Okay. Okay. So then moving right along.
So we're back. You can see here, I have traced out the shape of the peak lapel onto the body of the jacket. From here, I'm going to fold on this pencil line here and trace. So let me go off camera and fold it. I'll bring it back and show you the results. So I folded on.
Kenneth,
Yes.
how far out from the roll line is that pencil line?
This is a 1/4 of an inch, just a 1/4 of an inch. And the reason to do this, because if you could actually just fold it on the roll line and trace it, but since fabric is thicker than paper, when you make up the garment, this lapel is going to feel a little bit skimpy. It's going to feel a little bit narrow because a fold in fabric absorbs a 1/4 of an inch. So bumping this out that 1/4 of an inch from the roll line and folding before you trace is going to mean that when you actually make up the garment, you're going to get the full width of the lapel that you intend.
Thank you.
Okay.
Fine. Now I'm going to trace out these lapel lines onto, well, through all the paper. So I'll unfold this, mark it out in pencil, and bring it back. So here we have it traced off. Now let me give you a close-up on this. As you can see, we've traced the mirror image over to here. Now, first off, I'm going to deal with that there and then separating the upper collar. So let me just bring this down a little bit. What that's going to look like here, get a little mismatch here. So what we can do is just kind of bring this and blend. You just sort of split the difference between here and here. So I'm going to outline, this is going to be the upper collar. Or actually the collar piece. And so then we want to join it, blend it to the neck seam here. And so I'm going to bring this out like so. So this shape here is going to be the collar piece. And then this from here to here to there and up and down, that is going to be actually the lapel on the body. So what I will do next is cut the collar piece out. So for the collar piece, we're going to cut into there. Then we're going to cut to there. There you have it. There is the collar. We'll mark all of that later. So here we are back to the body. Now, if you remember, we closed this and pivoted it down to here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back in here and open up that dart. There we go. Open it up. By doing that, so you can see what we've done. We've reversed the dart. And we put the pattern back to its original dimensions. And so, just put in a little piece of paper here so you can see it a little better. Take this all down. So our dart is a little longer, but it's still going to fit the same. Next seam to here. These 2 points match. And then the next seam goes all the way down to here.
So see, Scott, does that answer the question from earlier?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It won't really make sense until I actually have my hands on the paper because I'm getting lost in the lines a little bit. So I'm a little dizzy, but that's okay.
Yeah. And so, see, that's the thing is, and so what I'm going to, like I said, what I'm going to do is when I send the Zoom meeting, I'm also going to send just the separate link on YouTube to this video. So, if you want to if you don't want to have to scroll through a whole bunch of stuff, you can go right to that. So,
Well, the other thing is I'm going to be buying a peak lapel jacket ready to go. So I'm not even going to have to go through all this, am I?
No,
Okay.
Yeah. So, what I would say though is you're going to buy the peak lapel jacket. You're going to keep the under collar. You're going to keep all of this. I'm going to show you how to draft the upper collar, the facing, and all of that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, wouldn't it already have all those pieces ready to go?
No. You see, the way I construct it, I want all the pieces drafted the way I was taught because I know they all fit together. I don't assume a commercial pattern is drafted that way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's just good to know because see, I know they all fit together. And yeah, I don't have that much confidence in commercial patterns. I think they're a good point to start, but knowing how to generate all these pieces is going to serve you well later.
Okay.
Okay. So other questions so far?
All right. To confirm, is it okay if you don't have a neck dart?
It's okay if you don't have a neck dart. This is just if you have one. If you don't have to go through all of this.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving right along.
A little more paper in there so you can see it.
Kenneth,
Yes.
question. For those of us who did the shawl jacket, all we have to do is superimpose that peak lapel tracing?
Yes. So
Thank you.
you're kind of ahead. So yeah. Okay.
So yeah, there we are. And this is how you're going to draft your peak lapel for your jacket. And when you're done, you still have what's called the Donelin wedge. That's what this is called. So what I will do, I have the body, I have the collar. I will copy these off on fresh paper so they're not so dizzying or confusing. But that is how you get your peak lapel. So here we have the entire front copied off. As you can see here, I've given a 1.5 inch hem, and then looking over to the left, we have the undercollar. So I'm going to begin with the undercollar. So here is the undercollar. Here is the upper end of the roll line. There is the center back. The undercollar and the canvas cut on the bias. So there is a center back seam. So what I've done here is I have made a copy. And so this here is the copy. Now, this is going to be the upper collar. So one thing we need to do first is to account for the turn of cloth. So we need 1/4 inch for a roll. So really what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the paper from here to here and spread 1/4 inch. So that's going to add the 1/4 inch exactly where we need it, which is where the fold of the collar is. So I will put this in here. Take this in place. Inch. We'll match the other end of that roll line. So you can see here, we've added the 1/4 of an inch all the way across. So here we split the difference to smooth out this curve. We've added the turn of claw right where it needs the turn. Now I'm going to add about 3/16 of an inch at the center back. You want a little more length along that back collar so it gets around the neck. So there, 3/8, it can be a 1/4 of an inch. And then around the edges, here and to here, we're going to add 1/8 of an inch, because you want the collar to favor to the under collar. This is the upper collar. We're going to sew it to the under collar. And then this, that tapers to nothing right at that point. So if we're looking at grain lines, there is the grain line parallel to the center back. And that's center back, back, fold. This is the upper collar. We have upper collar, we have under collar. So these two units are complete.
Kenneth,
Yes,
But before we,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Lower collar, you're gonna cut the horsehair canvas.
We're going to cut the
Correct.
canvas and the fabric on the
That. So you're not gonna do 2 pieces of horsehair, you're just gonna do one?
one underneath. It's yeah, and then the wool. Yes,
And then we're gonna pad stitch, correct?
absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Right, and different for the stand than the collar, correct?
Well, yeah, you'll see it when we get there.
Right.
Yeah, I like to do kind of a semicircle all the way around and have it, more dense in the center. And then
Right.
there's a whole thing I'm going to be doing out here to make
Right.
sure that these don't curl. If you remember from the raglan coat class,
Right,
it's
right.
a similar thing. So yeah, it's going to look somewhat like that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so other questions? Okay.
any further, we want to add on the under collar, 5/8 inch seam allowances all around. On the upper collar, cuts on the fold, 5/8 inch seam allowances around 3 of the sides. Now we can set these aside and concentrate on the fronts. So here we have the front copied off fresh. Now I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I've done. You can see starting up here, this is an orange line and it starts about 1.5 inches from the neck. The orange line represents the seam line that joins the lining to the facing. So this is the line that joins the lining to the facing. It is about 4 to 6 inches from the edge down here. And as I said, at the top, it's about 1.5 inches. Now, moving down the paper, 3 inches down from this intersection here is the blue line. And what that blue line represents, and it finishes inside by at least 1 inch, that represents body interfacing, body canvas. So what we're going to do first is we're going to trace off the body canvas. So we trace off this whole area here, and it will yield this piece here.
Kenneth, I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why is the roll, why does the roll line stop? Like I would have expected that roll line to go further down.
Well, what I like to do is you can have this, there's going to be a ribbon. for
Right.
the stay. I actually bring that down and just catch it in the seam here.
Right.
But I don't like to do all the pad stitching in this area because you might see it.
Okay.
So, you know, all the pad stitching really occurs in this area here where it hides well behind the lapel.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And you told us how long that line is, that the roll line.
It stops about 4 inches up from the V.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question, Kenneth.
Yeah.
before you start. On the roll line, it's also on the collar.
Yeah.
So are you also adding the, you know how you had to stretch the tape?
Yeah. That
Okay.
doesn't extend up to the collar. The roll line is just on the body.
Just an, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So other questions? Okay. Moving right along.
So you can see copied all the way down. And notice I've made sure to mark grain lines, roll line. Yeah, there's the roll line there, and the dart. So now I will add the seam allowances to this and bring it back so you can see what that looks like. So you can see I've added seam allowances all around here, and they continue on down to here.
Did you
This
add
line
one,
here?
Ken, did you add 1 inch on the top of this as well, like you did the shoulder?
Oh, no, this is just a standard 5/8.
Okay.
1 inch is just for the lining. This is for the body canvas. This is going to be between the layers.
Okay.
Okay.
Is paint. So it hangs loose inside the garment, so no seam allowance is necessary. So this, again, this is what we call the body canvas. Next, I'm going to show you the lapel facing. So for the lapel facing, I have traced off this line here, all of this region here. And again, this line is what joins the lining to the facing. This distance here is between 4 and 6 inches, depending, and it stops right here on the hem.
Kenneth.
Yes.
All right. So now this orange line seems like it goes very close to the bust apex.
Yeah.
And that's what you want? You want
can, well, no, you can kind of put it a little closer to center. You can have it a little further away from center. That is up to you.
a personal preference, right?
You have some
You
flexibility.
don't want right on the bust. Okay,
No,
thank you.
that's going to create a ridge.
Yes, right.
Okay.
So what that yields is this piece here. So there are going to be a few moves that I want to do with this particular piece. The first one of which is adding the turn of cloth. So in adding the turn of cloth, just to give you an idea where this is the roll line. We want to add 1/4 inch right there. So what I have found, this is a little thing I found works quite nicely. So you're going to draw just a cut line perpendicular to your roll line. And you're going to cut to there. And then you're going to cut along the roll line. So what's going to happen here is we're going to spread that 1/4 inch. Tape that. And then we'll patch in some paper to solidify. Okay, so this line here, we split the difference. That goes away and that goes away. And then up here, we smooth out this line here. And if you remember, we did a similar thing to the collar, so these should match, the upper collar, that is. So we've added the turn of cloth. Next, I'm going to add the favoring. So for the favoring, since this part of the lapel shows when the collar is folded out, we add 1/8 inch around all the way down to the break point. Tapers to nothing at the break point. So we add above the break point, and then we subtract 1/8 inch below the break point. And so that we're going to subtract all the way down. I'll keep subtract. In case you want to know, that means cancel. This means keep. So if you see those marks on a pattern, that's what it means. Now, to here, see, we've removed 1/8 inch, and do this step, the favoring, and the next step separately. Don't try to combine. What I found is just by favoring, what happens is the garment will pull under right at that point, as I call this the magic 1/4 inch. So after you've taken your favoring, you want to drop it down by 1/4 inch, down 1/4 inch. And then you want that to blend. So that angle, I don't quite understand why it works. I just know it does. Having this angle and this magic 1/4 inch makes the garment not pull under when you're constructing. Now there's one more thing we have to do. Last thing we need to do is get rid of that dart. We don't want a dart sitting on top of a dart. So this is a simple matter. Make a cut line here. Cut there. And make a cut line here. So what you will do here is hold that closed. And then get a little paper here. And this amount here, which is a scant 3/8. I'm going to take that off here. So I'm going to ink line is your new shoulder seam line. And then down here, We can just smooth this off here. So what we've done here, just to kind of explain, we pivoted this into the join between the facing and the lining. So it doesn't go away, it just moves. So from here, I will add the seam allowances and bring it back and show you the results. And as you can see.
Yes, question?
Yes, please. So how do we now correct our grain line?
Well, you would just use the original grain line coming from down here all the way up. Yeah, and
All
then
right.
this one then goes away. Okay?
The lapel facing has all of its seam allowances all the way down. And you are now ready to use it. Now we have one more body piece. So we now have traced off all of this and all of this. As the body facing, or the body lining piece, I'm sorry. And so this is what it's going to look like. Now you're probably wondering about this, which we'll deal with in just a moment. So it's a little bit odd. So let me show you how to handle all of this. Now, before we begin, as we did for the back pieces, we want to raise the hem allowance 3/4 of an inch in the front so that it won't hang out below the edge. So now moving up, what I'm going to do here is cut this. And then let's just see how that works. Okay. So if we match these two, I have a little extra here. So that's what I'm going to do. You see, I'm joining these up right at that seam. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a little bit of license here because we've added a little bit here. So if we just, at the top of this dart, if we just connect from there down to there, just do that in a color so you can see what I've done here. That should serve you just fine. So I'm just gonna draw this all. So the rest of this you just ignore because any dart shaping falls into the join between the facing and the lining. So now, one other thing, we're going to add the seam allowances all the way, except we're going to give an inch at the top, which I will show you in just a moment. But this, of course, is our lining. So let me add the seam allowances. Then I will bring it back and we will discuss. So we have all of the seam allowances added. And up here, this one is 1 inch, like the back shoulder seam on the lining. So here we have the lining front. Now, one last thing, the inside pocket. This is the opening for the inside pocket from A to B. It should be at least 5 inches, depending. And the pocket, ideally, should be as large enough so you can get your hand in. And so I've drawn this out, traced it off. And here is the pocket piece with no seam allowances. I will add the seam
Dennis?
allowances
Yes.
and bring you back.
That's coming out of which seam?
Okay, this is, let me just back up just a teeny bit. See, this is the join between the lining and the facing.
Okay.
And so roughly what I like placing the opening right about bust level so that the contents will settle below the bust, so that the contents will not sit right on top of the bust when you put something in this pocket.
And kind of speaking of the opening, I noticed that you have it vertical. It's not a horizontal for
Yeah.
a gentleman's jacket.
Yeah, I like it this way. Because see, we're going to put a piping on this seam.
Okay.
And so the beauty of this is when you're wearing it, you don't see a pocket. So for a couple of reasons, it's easier to line because you're used to like bespoke jackets where the lining jumps across this seam here. That's
Yeah.
all well and good, but have you ever tried relining one of those? It's a big pain in the neck. On this, you know, it's easier to line. And also, if you do any kind of traveling, no one really sees your pocket. So you're less likely to get your pocket picked because they don't know there's a pocket there. Also, it's prettier. So that's why that runs vertically rather than horizontally. Okay.
So there's no pocket on the outside seam that you can like put your hands into the pocket.
Well, there's going to be on the body where this Donlin wedge is, there's going to be a pocket.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when we get through with the video, I'll show you because I have the jacket hanging right here. So yeah,
Okay.
there's pockets on the outside. Absolutely. Okay. So other questions? Okay, let's
For the inside pocket from A to B, it should be at least 5 inches, depending. And the pocket, ideally, should be as large enough so you can get your hand in. And so I've drawn this out, traced it off. And here is the pocket piece with no seam allowances. I will add the seam allowances and bring you back those results. And here we have it, the inside pocket with seam allowances, and straight of grain is parallel to this opening so that it stays the opening. Now let's go back and review what we have created. So from our body front, we generated the body canvas. We generated the upper and under collar. We generated the front facing. And we generated the front lining. So these are the pieces that we generated.
Yes, question. I heard a question. Yes, no? Okay.
Kenneth, I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you drew that first V line at the very beginning, I know you did it from the upper shoulder, the shoulder point, but where did you, and was it at the waist? Did you draw it down to the waist or where?
Wherever you want your top button to occur.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay. So other questions? Okay, so we're reviewing what we did here.
Now let's look at the body back. From the back, we have the back panel, the side panel with the vents. We have drafted the back stay, and we've also drafted the back lining and the side back lining. So these are the pieces we generated from the back. And from the sleeve, we've drafted the surgeon's cuff onto the sleeve, upper sleeve, under sleeve, And then we also drafted lining upper sleeve, lining under sleeve. So we have all of the pieces cut. The next thing will be cutting and marking.
Which will be next week. So let me just turn this off.
Kenneth, I have a question. The pockets, we didn't draft, I mean, aren't they going to be, what are they called? Single lap pockets on the one that's above the bust.
Okay.
Don't you need a piece for that?
We're talking about, oh, here it is.
That, yes.
Yeah, we'll get to that in construction. And then see these are the lower pockets because the Donlin wedge, the double welt pocket sits into that. And we're going to learn how to make the flap that has 3 folded edges with 2 miters.
Right.
That's further down the road. But what I found is it's much easier to show the pattern making when I cover those because it makes a lot more sense. And now, I imagine your brains are full with all the different parts and pieces that we have just drafted. So this is where, it's like, this is the rough outlines of, this is what we need. There's going to be a little more pattern making a little further down the road, but we'll get to those when we get to them.
Kenneth, can you talk a little bit about fabric? Like I bought a Melton wool, but
that might be a bit heavy.
Yeah. So is it gabardine? Like what are we looking at? Like grams per, how thick?
I don't know grams per whatever because I'm not that terribly au courant as far as fabric terms.
Well, nor am I, but I'm just trying to figure out.
Okay. One thing I would say is don't go down the gabardine road. Have you ever sewn gabardine? Because it leaves shine. If you look at it funny, it will leave shine. It's just a weird fabric. If you want something that is close to it, a merino wool sateen. And I've used it over the years. Merino wool sateen. It has a slight sheen to it. It's a twill weave that kind of verges on satin. That's why they call it merino wool sateen. It's not as thin as gabardine. It's not as finicky. If you did say a light to medium weight wool or silk tweed, that would be a really good choice. See, tweed is much more forgiving for a first effort. So whenever I advise students, it's like, get the tweed.
Get the tweed.
Yeah. And so like one step up from a gabardine weight would be plenty. I don't know if this is helping. Is this giving you some idea of what to put?
I mean, wool tweed, lightweight wool tweed, I can go with that. Like, is Harris tweed, that's probably too heavy. So somewhere.
Some of the Harris tweeds are quite suitable for this.
Okay.
No, but you can't tell. You can't, well, especially if you're buying online, unless you know those damn brands.
So what I would say is, find a trusted retailer. One I would recommend is Gorgeous Fabrics in Boston. She has excellent taste. She kind of knows the kinds of things I like. And so you say you're taking this class, you want, a medium weight tweed of some sort, wool, silk, whatever. You will probably, she will have something that you can, that you would be happy with.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Kenneth, are we going to be making a muslin before we cut into our fashion fabric?
That's going to be when we do the office hour. That's what the office hour is for. So each one of you, and you can schedule it, like I said, anywhere between now and, before the next session, which is going to be a ways away. But yes, I want to see a muslin before you cut, because there's nothing more disheartening than going through all of this work. And trust me, it's a lot of work.
So between this meeting and next Wednesday, we should have all of our pattern pieces?
No, what I'm like in the next 6 weeks.
Oh, you mean the series?
Series, yes.
Oh, okay. I thought I had.
No, you don't have to bang it out, because see, also I have other things I'm doing too. So fitting in all of the office hours, having it kind of scattered out throughout the next 6 weeks is going to make it a little doable for me as well. But yes, I want to see a muslin, because there's no reason to go through all of this if it doesn't fit. It's a waste of time then.
Yeah, I got my beautiful Tom. Well, go ahead.
So Anne, did you have a question?
Yeah, so do we make a muslin after we've drafted all of these pieces? No,
No, you would just,
okay,
the muslin is the main body pieces. You want to try it on with the shoulder pads.
okay,
And, if you want to prepare it for the fitting, what I would say is prepare the body and we get the body fitting and then we can hang the sleeve. Much
okay.
easier than trying to sew the sleeve into the body.
Just what we did the other day.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, so I don't need to make another muslin after I draft all these? I'm
No.
gonna assume I'm doing it right. Okay,
See, I've done it so many times. I know it works.
okay,
This is where, like, trust me, I know that this works because I have made, several different ones. This being the one, just, this one, I love this fabric. I just have to show you. I had to do some fast talking to get it. I mean, check out that fabric. It photographs a little bit too brown, but it's like moss green. It's like moss growing on a shiny or lustrous black ground. And I've made several off, and this is the jacket that we're going to be making in the class. You're going to see how that particular jacket goes together. So, all of the different parts and pieces that I've shown you, I know they work. This is formula.
Excuse me, Kenneth.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, back onto the fabric. Living in the South,
Mm-hmm.
it gets warm. It gets hot.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the wintertime, it doesn't get that cold.
Okay.
So what would be a good kind of fabric for this jacket? Then?
Well, like a silk tweed is really excellent because this one here is like, I wouldn't say lightweight, but kind of light to medium weight silk tweed.
Okay.
This is kind of one of my all around, I wear it in the winter, I wear it in the summer. In the winter, I have to wear like a turtleneck underneath it. In the spring, summer, if I need to look nice, this is the one I get out. So something like this, a wool or a silk tweed or silk and cotton.
Silk and cotton.
It's going to be easier to wear. It's not going to be oppressive or too hot. I would caution you about linen because linen wrinkles. I have this, I like sewing with it, but I don't like wearing it because I always end up looking like an unmade bed after about 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's the problem with linen. Yeah.
So, like a silk tweed, silk and cotton, silk and rayon, something like that would be, I think, a good choice.
Okay, thank you.
And again, if you call Anne at Gorgeous Fabrics and just say, I'm taking this class, I live in the South, something with the texture, silk, rayon, silk cotton, whatever. If she doesn't have it right away, she can get it.
Okay.
So it's an excellent resource to know about.
Okay, thank you.
Kenneth?
Yes.
Just so they know, Anne is traveling right now.
Yeah, I know. I see her on
Oh,
Instagram.
okay, so if they try to contact her.
Yeah, she's in Italy right now, which, good for her because, they couldn't celebrate their like 3 years of wedding anniversary. So they're getting it all done in this trip, which I think is wonderful. So, good on her. Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can you go over the sessions again?
Okay, I'm missing some of what you're saying. Could you start over?
Yes, please. Can you go back over how this session worked? I'm not sure.
Okay, I still didn't get that. Can I go back over what?
The sessions, the class session.
Okay, actually, I have that in the email outlined because see, this week we're doing the pattern making.
Right.
Next week, I believe we're doing all like the cutting and marking, like all what you have to cut from all the different pieces. Then, God, I have to look at it from here. I don't have it in front of me.
No. I mean, you were talking about you do something after 6 weeks.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So to 6 weeks, we're going to get to a certain point, and I have it listed in the email that I sent you where we're going to be at the 6 weeks. We're not going to be anywhere near getting a jacket done yet. So then, there's going to be 4 weeks that you have a chance to get your homework done because, we all have lives, this is not the only thing we're doing with our time. And so then once I schedule and I'm going to check in probably maybe halfway through to see when we should schedule session 2. so that you all can have the time, because we're heading up onto the holidays, and people, I mean, there's so many things you have to do in the holidays that I'm not going to start the class right in the holidays. That's just not fair. So then session 2 is going to be a 6 weeks, and then we're going to get to a certain point, and then we're going to have another little hiatus, and then session 3 we're going to like all the finishing. So it's going to be 3 different installments that's going to build this jacket.
Next week, you want us to start drafting our pieces?
I think that would, well, what I would say is you can start drafting the pieces. What I would say is really start working on your muslins. If you haven't, yeah, get your muslins to fit. Don't go through all this nosebleed of drafting all these pieces until you know that the body fits.
Okay.
You see, this is one of the things, I learned this from my teacher, Simone. And if I'm dealing with someone who has a commercial pattern that they want me to help them with, what I do is I just tell them to put all the corollary pieces, that's what I call them, put all the corollary pieces away. And we get the main body and the sleeves to fit. Once we get that the way we want it, then it's just formula. This is all formula. If you follow this on any kind of jacket, it's going to work. I've done this for God since 1990, and I just know that it works. This is part of what I learned from my teacher, Simone. It's just formula. So get the muslin fitting first before you start going through all the work generating the pattern pieces. And then once you have the pattern pieces, then it's a matter of, then we can start cutting out and marking.
Thank you.
And for main body, you're just no facing. It's just the front, the back, and the sleeves.
Just the front, the back, and the sleeve. Laura, you had a question.
So I can't even pick a size because D cups, or not even, they're more than that. There's a 5-inch difference, and they have 2 size ranges. You can get, they drafted alternate D cup fronts for the jacket. And I emailed them during the last class trying to get them to explain what the finished measurements are and what those measurements were based on, and they just won't. And so like I have to do a full bust adjustment, which I understand. Put the panels together, cut a side seam, do the FBA, join them together, make a Dior dart, and carry on.
Well,
but
one thing about the Dior dart, the Donnellan wedge,
it's
going to be your friend here, because any side dart that you have to put in, you can put that in the Donnellan wedge.
Okay. All right.
That's
okay.
That's
Cool.
going to help you out here. So that I don't know if that gives you any help or guidance, but what I would say, the thing is, you want to go with, you want it to fit well in the shoulders and upper body,
Right.
then add, as then add around here with the full bust adjustment.
So would you just pick, like 16 is my upper chest, and then I mean my waist is, I'm 52, it's going away. But would you just choose like the size 16, which is the 40, and just do the full bust adjustment?
Yeah.
So when I do the full bust adjustment, though, do you want me just to cut it at the Donlin wedge and just work above that?
But what you're going to do is, you're going to cut it across here. And, when you spread it, normally you end up with the dart here.
Yeah.
Well, then, you cut your Donlin wedge over and up and fold this out, and the Donlin wedge is going to come out a little further.
Oh, just when you rotate the dart that you get from the FBA into the Donlin wedge, and don't worry about, that's so, but then what do you, so the other complicating factor, right, is you spread it down and out, right? It drops down, which is fine. That's easy. But it also is you have to bring I mean, maybe I don't, because that'll get me what I need in my waist potentially, but you always have to bring it back so that the side seam is now vertical again.
So again, the Donlin wedge, when you fold that out, it's going to come kind of way out for you.
Right.
But when we construct that, because that's what we're going to be doing that at some point, you're going to actually sew that dart, and it's going to bring this seam straight. And where those 2 parts of the Donlin wedge meet is where we set the double welt pocket.
So I don't have to worry about figuring out how to rotate it back because the Donlin wedge will do that for me.
Donlin wedge does it for you. Yes, ma'am.
So you would just do like 2.5 inch or so FBA on that sucker?
Yeah, give that a shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
So other questions? See, this is, you know, I was I just last weekend I was teaching moulage in Tacoma, and we had a couple of gals who had nice full bosoms, and now Lori, have you ever done a moulage?
So what I did was Herbacea Studios. I had
Okay.
this weird experience. My friend took her confident pattern making and grading course.
Okay.
And then Victoria had a giveaway of this $3,000 class, which I happened to win because I thought I'm just going to enter this because my friend Jenny did this class. So for some reason I thought, and so I won this class. So she's young enough, she doesn't understand curved darts, but she does know like her stuff. But so we basically drafted, it was a fitted, tailored shirt.
Okay.
And then we were both supposed to just abandon that. And I went, well, I want this to fit me, right? I want it to fit me. So instead of doing what I was supposed to do, I focused on trying to get the bust to fit. Now, when she had me draft the shoulder dart, she made me make it narrower than it should have been. So there was a lot of strife and struggle and me going, it needs an FBA, it needs an FBA, it needs an FBA. And I finally just slashed the thing and did the FBA. The issue that I have is the side dart is huge.
Okay.
And so it doesn't fit. It fits, but it needs a double side. It needs double bust darts, I think, and I don't quite know where to put them. I don't know, do they just both point at the apex, but one's down a bit, or I don't know how you
what
do
I
that.
do is you got this big wedge here.
Yeah.
Hold it closed and draw, you could even do 3. Draw 3 lines, slash lines. The middle one is going to actually point to the apex. And this one is going to angle over. This one's going to angle over. And so you cut. And so what's going to happen is, you're going to have 3 darts. It's much easier to distribute a very full dart into smaller darts than it is to try to do a curved dart even.
Right, I know. So you would see, can I finish, please?
Sorry.
Yeah. Let her finish, and then Sally, you'll be next. Yes, go ahead.
So that's what you would do. Like, and I looked at it as like, I'm kind of making a moulage, right? Is what I kind of looked at it. That's what my goal ended up being. So you're saying that if I were to, and then you use that and you draft from it, just draft everything I make with 3 darts, depending on the style. Okay.
Yeah.
But for this particular jacket, you wouldn't bother because the Donlin wedge fixes the problem.
Donlin wedge helps you. You're gonna be really happy to see that is going to give you something to work with. And you may have to have a little bit of a side dart in there, and there's no crime in that. But figure at least some of it is going to go into that Donlin wedge.
I'll have to think about, so when you actually take those, so you bring them all back to the bust point, when you actually, so they don't all actually angle at the bust point, only the center one does. The other 2 are just above and below.
Yeah, and they're roughly parallel.
And they're equal in width, probably. Because it was, like I said to her, I'm going to have like a 25 centimeter dart here. It wasn't that much, but it was probably 15. And she's just like, well, yeah, that's, so you make it, and she just kept trying to make it fit by adding the underarm. And then all you do, it just doesn't, she's very, very flat, and she's delightful, and she knows a lot of stuff, but she admitted she didn't ever really have to deal with something, that's 5 inches different.
But what I would recommend, Linda Maynard teaches the moulage online. I would recommend maybe considering taking her class. Because honestly, again, I go back to this weekend, I had these 2 ladies, and for one of them, I'm not being indiscreet because we don't know her, we ended up having to tape two tape measures together to get the full circumferences. But the only adjustment we had to make was just like taking it in a little bit at the, because the skirt kind of winged out at the full hip. I needed to take it in so that it dropped straight. But all of this in here and with, everything, it all fit.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah,
If you were to do 2 side darts instead of 3, do you just put the second one below and same thing, just parallel?
I would just have them, have them equal to, you have a line kind of from the apex, and I would have them kind of maybe an inch apart, straddling that line, so that they, not one of them points to that, but they both kind of, the apex is in the middle.
And they both kind of they don't point at the apex at all, or they both point at the apex?
Well, they'll point kind of, they'll kind of do this, where the apex is kind of here. So
I've just never tried it because I've never been able to figure out where they should, how do you point them, kind of thing. So
and that too, that's one of those partly design things. You turn it into a design feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you so much.
So now, Sally, you had a question.
Well, actually, I was just to let Lori know, I had messaged her in the chat. There's a company called Cashmerette that does patterns that are specifically designed for women who have busts.
I've used their patterns, and I still have to do FBAs on them. It's still, and the darts, not to disappoint you, but the darts on Cashmerette they're huge too. They're equally huge. It doesn't, they do a really good job, and I like Jenny's amazing, but the darts are still, that's what reassured me. I took one of her patterns in Illustrator, took my draft, laid it on top, and went, okay, it is huge, but it is right, because that's what their EF cup looks like. So I did it right. It just, it's enormous.
Yeah.
And I always thought their darts were smaller, and she must have been doing something special, and she's not. It's the same thing. It's just the pointy bit is just, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was an amazing prize, but it was a lot of work. It was like trying to do 4 months of schoolwork along with a full-time job. And it was a ton of work, but, and I learned so much, and it's so cool. But yeah, it was the dealing. She had never dealt with anybody with more than a B cup before, kind of thing. And she just didn't understand curved darts. She goes, you can't make curved darts. I'm like,
yes, you can.
Hey, Kenneth?
Yes, ma'am.
you guys are all so young.
Yeah. Scott, yeah, go ahead.
A word about fabrics. I'm sitting here looking at my stash. I've got plenty of men's suiting, so a good wool suiting would be perfect for this jacket.
Absolutely, yeah. What I would caution you for a first go is stay away from the Super 120s or any of those. Something with a little more heft. Because I don't know if you've ever worked with like a Super 100, Super 120, or Super 200. It's like working with satin.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no margin for error. If I have someone who wants something, I really run up the price because I will earn it. But
well,
I
you
know
said
your
3
taste.
yards. So 3
Okay.
yards. I'm a 46. I'm a 46 long. So 3 yards.
3. You probably would want more than 3 yards.
Okay, because the problem is I've got all these 2-yard cuts for my trousers. So, but I had some Tom Brown fabric, which I'm really afraid to cut, but I'm going to have to. It's got a really medium weight. I've got one, some of his grays.
Yeah.
In my stash, and I've got plenty of yards of that. So I guess that should be okay.
Yeah, that should work. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so it looks like we're heading to the end. So any questions before we sign off for the evening?
Yes. What's a melange?
So
yeah,
our homework will be to start drafting.
Okay. So Paula, did you have a question?
Yes. What's a moulage?
Oh, a moulage. It is the foundation of the system of pattern making I learned from my teacher, Simone, 100 years ago when I lived in San Francisco. And it is a system of measurements, or I want to say 23 measurements you take. You put the circumferences in the calculations. It's like a big geometry problem. And since 1991, I have made hundreds of them, and I have never seen it fail. Like I said, I had these 2 ladies, and I was thinking, okay, they're a little kind of outside what I've normally done. I've made some moulages close to that, but I was just thinking, okay, well, it's going to be interesting to see. And by God, it worked. So it's, and I, you know, and you have to do little tiny tweaks, but I've never had to make a second muslin. It's
Okay.
that accurate. So it's a pretty amazing system.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, folks. So I'm going to sign off. I'm going to download this. Then I have to download it to YouTube. So probably by tomorrow morning, you will get an email with the link for the recording for this evening, and also the link for.
You teach at school?
What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. So you know this. So you'll get the link for this, and you're going to get the link for just the video. So if you don't want to have to, you know, if you want to just go to the video, you can go to the video. So that's what you're going to be getting. Okay. And then I will also set up the next Zoom link so that I can send that in the same email. So you have it all in one place. Okay.
Thank you, Kenneth.
Okay. Good work. Good work. Thanks for coming. And I will see you all next week.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.